3 questions today asked about Antonio Brown. All 3 answers were some form of, I'm not going to talk about that. He basically said, hey, he's getting more information. I don't know anything, so I can't tell you anything. So I don't know how much he's just kind of playing coy or how much he's not really in the loop on exactly what's going on with Antonio Brown. But it's pretty clear that Gruden is very frustrated with Brown not being there. And the fact that every day, every question is about Antonio Brown. Gruden wants to talk about the guys that are there and what's going on. So he seems to have now just said he's shutting down all Antonio Brown questions until he's back on the field.
It's Adam Hill. We go behind the patch, finding out about the Raiders training camp. He's in Napa. All right, let's talk about Carr specifically. I know, Candy, you wanted to bring up, the comment that you saw the other day from Derek Carr?
So I found it interesting. I was looking at Q&A with Vic Tafur from The Athletic talking about how Derek Carr has, quote, a chip on his shoulder this year, that he wants to prove something. And what we know, Adam, of Derek Carr's personality doesn't really lend itself to a chip on his shoulder. I mean, the guy kind of goes even-keeled, in his social media presence, it's all positive. What does it look like if Derek Carr has a chip on his shoulder? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we talked the other day about he's only available once a week, so you don't really get a whole lot of insight onto exactly what Derek Carr's thinking. I've only been here for one of his media availabilities. But you can tell, on the field, that there's I don't know if chip on his shoulder is the right thing. I think that's a cliche thing for athletes to say of, you have something to prove. But there's definitely been plenty of detractors about Derek Carr and his contract and the money he makes, and that, his stats were good last year as far as accuracy goes, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire in terms of, touchdowns or putting up points necessarily. He was just kind of, playing it safe, more conservative, and making the safe plays all the time. So, yeah, I think he wants to prove that he's this franchise's quarterback for the long term. I think it tells you a lot that he bought the house next to Gruden. We've joked a lot about that, and we've made comments about that, but I think it tells you something that he's trying to show, hey, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be this franchise's quarterback. I'm moving in right next to the coach that's going to be here for 10 years, and we're going to be pals. We're going to live together. We're going to go over film at home. And, again, they're joking about all those things, but I think Carr is trying to send a message of he doesn't plan on going anywhere. But I do think this is a kind of a make-or-break year. I think if Carr can't take that next step and, be not only more productive but more, win more and have that, have that presence as a leader for the long term, I think this is kind of a make-or-break year for him. So there is something to prove, despite the fact that he has a big contract and, the numbers were okay. There's clearly something for him to show if he wants to be the quarterback long term, and I think this is the year to do it. So you can kind of see that. And you could see it today. There was a lot of frustration. They went live for a 2-minute drill for, the first-team offense with one series, and they went 3 and out, and Carr had a miscommunication on one play with a young tight end. It's not clear whose fault it was, but he certainly showed some frustration. Then there was I said a 3 and out. It was a 4 and out. They had a 4th down play. He went deep to Tyrell Williams, and Williams was open, and he overthrew him, and Carr was very frustrated. He slammed off his helmet and said, "That's a touchdown." It wasn't clear if he was mad at himself for overthrowing or mad at Williams for coming out of the break late or what, but there's definitely some frustration there that you could see building with him. So I think, the message has been received. There's a lot on Derek Carr this year.
Talking to Adam Hill from Raiders training camp up in Napa. Adam, playing off what you just said, who is Derek Carr trying to prove it to? Is he trying to prove it to Jon Gruden? Is he proving it to his teammates, to himself? Because it seems to me when you're going to add in the Antonio Brown kind of personality into the offense, Derek Carr has to take control to some level, because otherwise you risk having the kind of personality, the kind of disruptive force that we saw in Pittsburgh over time with Ben Roethlisberger, where they just figured out some way to professionally make it work, even when it always wasn't on great terms. So who do you think Derek Carr really has to prove it to?
I mean, I think it's Gruden. I think that's number one. And again, I think that goes hand in hand with moving index to him and just sending that message like, hey, I'm here to work and we're going to build that relationship. And it was clear at times last year that, they weren't necessarily on the same page, whether that was just Gruden getting acclimated back to football or whether it's Carr just not doing the things that he wanted to do. Like, there was definitely some times where that relationship was strained, and both of them have been, singing Kumbaya throughout camp here that everything's great. But I think he has to prove it to him. And I think Gruden, Gruden does not want to. He did not come back to lose, and they certainly lost a lot last year. If they're losing again this year, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Gruden would figure out what it takes to get his own guy in there and get somebody else that he's more confident in. Now, you look around, the defense has been improved, especially on paper. They should be better. They were awful last year. The offensive line had some weak spots, but there's some really good players on the offensive line, and now if Incognito, after the 2-game suspension, comes back and he's half of what he was 3 years ago, that's an upgrade at left guard. If Colton Miller takes that next step, the offensive line could be better. Certainly they've upgraded in the receivers. They give him a number 1 draft pick at running back. This offense is pretty strong on paper, and if he can't take that next step and prove it that he's the long-term answer at quarterback, I think it is Gruden that he has to prove it to and say, hey, keep me around. I want to be part of this franchise going forward. And as they transition to Las Vegas, I know that if he struggles this year, they're not going to want to go into Las Vegas off 2 bad seasons if they're not completely confident in their quarterback.
We talked about the depth chart yesterday, and something I missed. Wide receiver, one of the top receivers on the top line, is Hunter Renfrow. Is this real?
Yeah.
The Clemson kid?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear watching practice that he's kind of in there at that slot receiver right now, that third spot, and he's been getting a lot of action with the first team. I think if the season started today, it would not be surprising to see him as that starting receiver. I wouldn't read a whole lot into the depth chart that came out yesterday. It's an unofficial, week 1 first depth chart of the preseason. There were some other spots on there that you look at and say, I wonder how much this is accurate in regards to if they were to start today. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Hunter Renfrow was a starting slot receiver when they open play. He's been impressive. Today there was one little incident, not incident's the wrong word, but there was a play in the 2-minute drill where he caught a pass going to the sideline and he decided to turn it up and try to get a first down instead of going out of bounds. And there was some frustration from the coaches there, but I think that's kind of a rookie play that you kind of learn from. But he's been good. And I know that they were trying him out in the return game as well, a little bit of special teams work for Renfrow. I think they want to use him in a variety of different ways. I think they trust him. They want to get the ball in his hands a little bit, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear watching practice that he's going to get a very good look as that slot receiver.
Hard Knocks tonight, episode 1.
Tonight.
We asked you for a prediction yesterday. You said that Johnathan Abram will probably be featured significantly. I read Gelkin in a tweet about Abram. What does this mean? That already he's a follow me or else guy. He's an alpha dog. Gelkin said, I've never seen a guy come in as a rookie and take control of the room.
Yeah, every single person you talk to on the defensive staff or defensive players just rave about his leadership ability, that he is just a guy that gets in your face. You talk to other players, and they say there's veterans out there that, won't even talk to guys when they make a mistake at practice. And Abram's right in their face. And not just that he's telling them, he's doing it. You watch after practice, guys kind of break off in their own groups and, work on whatever little things they need to work on. Abram is in every group. You're like, oh, he's over there, working on his hands on the jugs machine right now. Oh, no, wait, he's over there hitting with the defensive lineman. What is this? He's in every single individual group, not only going through the drills himself, working on individual skills, but also telling guys, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to be responsible for this. He is a natural leader, and everybody tells you that. And not to mention, he's got a fantastic backstory, and I don't mean fantastic. I guess that's the wrong word. It's not a good one, but his family has been through a tragedy. As his wife was having twins, she lost one of the twins, so that's something that they went through. So that's a story that I'm sure they would tell on TV, and it's something that he's talked about and been vocal about, and what the impact was on his life. So I think he's a natural-born television character and a natural-born leader. Not surprising that he was penciled in as a starter on that unofficial depth chart yesterday.
Let me give the correct attribution on that quote. That was actually the D-backs coach who was talking about Abram in such glowing terms about being a follow me or else guy. He's an alpha dog. I'm going to build on dog. Were you there? This is going to make it on Hard Knocks. I don't know if it'll make it on this episode. Were you there when they brought the dog out? Did the Raiders, what's going on here? Is this a Raiders contribution to Metro? Who was this dog, and why was he annihilating a dude in one of those big puffy suits?
So that was actually a Metro officer. There was 2 Metro officers up here today. Just kind of the Raiders kind of reached out and brought them up here. Metro needed a dog They reached out to the Raiders and told them they needed a dog. The Raiders purchased the dog for Metro, also paid for the training process, which involved 4 weeks at a hotel for the dog and his Metro partner.
Wow.
So the dog is named Raider. And by the way, before we even knew what the dog was or who the dog was, there was a long discussion between some of the reporters about the best athlete on the field being that dog. He was ripped. And just like he was like on edge, like they were walking him on the leash, and he looks like he wants to get into a rep and just hit somebody. Like that dog was unbelievable. And then, I'm sure you saw the video of showing us the simulation of what the dog can do on the street if he has to apprehend a bad guy. And he is just vicious until they tell him to stop, and then he's very relaxed and nice and calm. I did get to pet the dog. He's very nice.
Oh, you did?
I did.
I
petted him.
I figured
he had a muzzle on.
No way you were going near that dog. That was a good-sized dog. You hate big dogs.
Yeah, he had a muzzle on. I was okay with it.
Okay.
It wasn't going to happen. But I will say I was standing next to Derek Carr during the presentation. He was very impressed with the dog, but he also did say, first of all, he said, I think I'd have a good chance against the dog, which he was wrong. There's no way that he'd have a good chance against the dog. But he also looked around. He assessed the situation, and he's looking around, and he goes, all right. He saw a couple of his offensive linemen, because there was about 10 players out there.
Right.
Saw a couple offensive linemen and a couple of media members, including me and the aforementioned Vic Tafer. And he goes, you know what? I'm not the slowest guy here. I'll be all right. Because he was a little worried about the dog just kind of running loose. And there was a lot of a cautioning of us to get behind a barrier to watch the dog. Because they told us if we made a little too much noise, the dog might get confused and go after us. So there were some tense moments, but we made it through. And man, that dog is unbelievable.
I love it.
I mean, how bad did you feel for the guy, even though he's in a suit? I thought he was going to kill him.
Well, it was great. It was like a 20-yard dash. He leaps at the dude like toward one of his shoulders, latches on. You said he was pretty disciplined, but when they first tried to pull him off, the dog is then vertical to the ground. Like they're yanking him. I'm like, freaking Kyle Turley, throw a penalty on this dog.
Well,
are you sure he's got all the discipline after the hotel stay?
Yeah, his tooth got stuck on the suit. That's why he couldn't get off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was fantastic, though. It was quite a scene to watch.
We can't have Adam Hill on, and he's in Napa right now, without talking about the punters. But today, it sounds like Gruden brought up the punters on his own. You didn't have to do it?
Not only did he didn't bring up the punters on his own, Steve. He brought up A.J. Cole on his own.
Okay.
So there was a question about the middle linebacker competition, the backup linebacker competition, and he gave 10 words about it, and then just started raving about how good A.J. Cole has been in camp and forcing this competition with Johnny Townsend.
Yeah.
That's the unofficial depth chart that came out yesterday. You talked about it. A.J. Cole is listed as the backup to Johnny Townsend. I told you yesterday, I've already made my selection. A.J. Cole's making this team, and I'm not backing off that after the way Jon Gruden talked about A.J. Cole today. So either he's very impressed with A.J. Cole and he thinks he's going to be the punter, or he's really, really trying to send a message to Johnny Townsend here, because that was an unsolicited rave review of A.J. Cole. And, Johnny Townsend, the incumbent punter from last year who they used the draft pick on, he is in trouble, and A.J. Cole murdered the ball today.
You love the punting beat. Punting beat.
I do. But again, I think I mentioned yesterday, but I'll say it again. It's going to come down to whether they trust him as a holder. There's no question that A.J. Cole is the better punter. That's not even in dispute anymore. But Johnny Townsend was a very, very good holder last year, and if they don't trust Cole to be the holder, I imagine Townsend will win the job. But so far, Cole has looked serviceable as a holder. So we'll see how that plays out. But I really hope this is a focal point of Hard Knocks.
Hey, last thing. Do you think tomorrow, do you believe they're all going to watch Hard Knocks, and do you think it'll be an open discussion tomorrow with the team? I'm not really sure how it works from team to team if they're like, we didn't watch, we don't care, don't bother us with this Hard Knock stuff.
Yeah, Gruden said they won't watch it as a team. He said they have meetings, but he said he imagines – I'm trying to remember the quote exactly. I tweeted it out earlier, but he said he imagines some of the guys will use whatever that thing is where you record things and can watch them whenever you want to. So Gruden doesn't know about, DVRs or anything like that. But he said he imagines the players will watch it. LaMarcus Joyner said they absolutely will watch it. He said he actually had an interesting point. He said when he was at the Rams, he wasn't in a good place mentally or emotionally. He didn't want to watch the show, but now he is much happier, and he will be watching the show. So he's been on it before. He was a part of it before. A lot of players were very excited about watching it. Actually, as they came off the field today, they usually don't do a whole lot of like stopping and talking to the media, but actually a couple guys stopped and were asking like, "Hey, what do you think's going to be on the show? You're excited to watch it?" There was definitely some chatter about it with the media. So I think the players are very excited to check out what's going to happen on the show.